Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. And on this week's episode, Aaron and Kevin are talking about Ruth chapter 3, where Ruth lays it all on the line as she uncovers the feet of Boaz, seeking him to be her redeemer. And so we're going to have a conversation here about our following after Jesus, our need of him being our redeemer, and what that looks like in practical living. So as always, it's our goal in this podcast that you take something that you hear and start another faith-filled conversation with somebody else. And just so you know, happy 150th episode. We hope you enjoy it. Are we going to talk here today and do some stuff?
Oh,
Kevin?
we'll definitely talk. What's up, dude?
Hey, what should we call it when we talk to each other?
What do you like to call it?
I like to call it 150 episodes of conversating with you, dude.
Is that really today?
Cheers,
dude. I didn't even dress up for the occasion. Oh man, I gotta play that.
Leave that playing the whole time.
That's the 150th anniversary theme song. Welcome back.
I'm pretty sure it's this one, anyways.
It'll be 149.
It'll be like when you're 29 about to be 30 or 39 about to be 40, how you're perpetually 39. We're going to be perpetually 149.
Yeah, we don't age.
Yeah.
Dude, think of how this is. We've come a long ways.
Yeah.
149 episodes ago, if that number is correct, where were we even sitting? Here? Were we here? I think we were here. The brown couch.
Yeah.
Brown couch is pretty classic.
Just a little phone on a stand, I think.
Yeah. There wasn't even microphones, was
I
there?
don't think so.
Because we didn't even have the lapels yet.
No, it was a silent film.
It was black. It was black and white with little text at the bottom that told you what we had just said.
Wait.
We moved it, and then we laughed.
I was on the piano in the corner.
Ragtime, you little yeah.
Remember? It was so fun.
Oh, those were the days. I was trying to remember where I am and really contextualize myself, because I can get going kind of comedically here, Yeah. But this maybe isn't the stage for that. Well, it's just okay. I'll let you in on my brain space. I was recalling also when we began this podcast, what was happening globally, socially, healthily.
Yeah.
No, it was the pandemic. We started this in the pandemic as, in part, a way to, continue to get together in some ways,
right.
Make connections with people who maybe weren't connecting person to person. So we got a little more digital in that age. Mm-hmm. And we are still living into that reality, or that reality, rather, has in some ways shaped our ministry.
Definitely. Absolutely. I mean, we started this. For you, St. Peter and Paul has always had a podcast.
Yeah, we basically have always done this. That's our inside joke for anything that has existed prior to June 14, 2020, or when I began here.
Yeah.
If it started June 13, it's always existed.
Right. It's just funny how that.
Yeah.
How would we know any other way though?
It's exactly. To William, Lily has always existed.
Right.
She's a timeless creature.
Yeah. That's crazy. No, but yeah, we did start this with the intent of, we have a couple of intents. We say it every week. Our goal is that we want to, mimic how to have spiritual conversations or faith-filled conversations, and then hopefully as you see us just kind of sitting and talking faith and joking around, but then also talking faith, that you realize you can do the same thing.
It's like the box on caffeine.
There you go.
Yeah. I just put my coffee cup in the screen in case you're listening to this episode.
Yeah. And the box, you're talking about the children's lesson that we do at church?
Yeah, in case you've never seen the box. Yes, our children's message.
What do we do with that?
So a kid puts something in a box, and then we talk about it and connect it to Jesus.
Yeah.
In some ways to demonstrate that anything can be connected to Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Because Jesus connected to everything.
That's right. He is in all things.
Boom. Boom, boom, boom.
So here we are, 150 episodes later.
150. Still going strong.
Still drinking coffee.
Still conversating.
Still conversating. That word is being used more and more. Pay attention, guys. It's out there.
Is it?
I don't know. Yeah, of course it is. This podcast has changed the English language.
That button's too far away. That's where the button.
I thought you were going to play that groovy song again. Speaking of groovy.
Yeah, dude.
This last week of Ruth, the Ruth narrative was pretty groovy.
Yeah.
Chapter 3.
Yeah.
It's a little hot and heavy for me.
Yeah, you like that?
I did. Actually, like, truly, I liked in the message that part where you were like alluded to rom-coms.
Yeah.
And which I thought was like super relatable because it like that is what's going on, you know, at the tail end of the chapter. It's kind of like, we're not resolved here. There's some tension.
Exactly.
What's going to happen? And that happens, in every classic rom-com movie.
I know. Mm-hmm. I don't like it.
What don't you like about it? I thought you liked tension, Aaron.
No, I don't like unnecessary conflict. Where it's just like, come on. Like, we know they're going to end up together.
Are they, though?
Have you ever seen a rom-com?
You ever seen The Breakup?
No. Did they break up?
Yeah. I don't know if that's romantic comedy. That might be a rom-trage, actually, now that I think about it. Rom-trage is a more niche category of film. Okay, well, give me an example.
They die.
Give me an example of unnecessary
No, I don't know. I mean...
From a rom-com. Yeah. That's what you're talking about. You're saying there's tension in these films and it's unnecessary.
No, I mean, but that's, in all honesty, there's art to it. It's, if you pay attention to any fiction, it's called the narrative arc, right? Where it's, I forget what all the steps are, but it's like,
starts out like setting.
Yeah, and then you plot and characters, and then
at some point
there's conflict, and then the climax, and then like more conflict, and then resolution.
Right. Yeah, I think it's conflict, rising action, climax, and then I think it's like conflict resolution.
Yeah.
Is like the downside, I think. I don't know. It's been a while since I've charted it. But so you're right. That's like a classic.
Yeah. Pay attention to any fictional. I mean, not that Ruth is fictional. It's a story. Any story that is written. So you can, anything that's got a narrative arc, anything, as you even retell stories, you'll probably retell them in that kind of way. It's just the way life goes. It's like,
exactly,
here are the people, here's where we were, here's some stuff that happened, and then this happened, and then So
I was just gonna say, it's used for fiction, but I think it also applies to the nonfiction.
Oh yeah,
the stories of our lives. So I mean, maybe for the hearer's sake, depending on if they were there, if they weren't there, what's a conflict, necessary or otherwise? What's going on with this Ruth gal?
I just mean unnecessary. Like when I'm watching a movie and the people are in love, it's like, all right, let's just end it. That's what I mean. I'm like, why do we got to do it?
You should watch The Breakup. All you'd have to do is watch the opening segment, and then you'd be right. All right, we're good. The end.
There you go.
They met each other. They had a great relationship. End.
There you go. Yeah. All right.
Well, but I think what you're like, honestly, I'm curious. Like when you say unnecessary, I think what you're saying is this tension could be resolved if certain actions were taken, or could have been avoided.
I think so. Yes, that's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times in like movies and stuff, it's like, you guys you're just not communicating well.
That also sounds like nonfiction.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
No. Anyway, so Ruth. Yeah.
Well, sure.
Again, the setting, like the struggle again is that like Ruth and Naomi, they're in need. They're just desperately in need of food but also like protection Naomi's got, I believe it seems like she's got property that belongs to her by way of her husband. And so to keep this stuff in the family, they need a redeemer.
Because she has no one to bequeath this property to.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. So
her sons are dead. Yes.
So they've got nothing. And so basically, it's like Boaz is the one extending favor to Ruth, and he seems like a great guy to receive favor from, and he's one of the potential redeemers. So the redeemer, like who can be a redeemer and for what, according to the Mosaic law. You can read about all this stuff in Leviticus, but
it's a little ambiguous, though, isn't it? About like what qualifies someone to be like the closest proximity. Yeah. Like, I don't think it really traces out like, husbands, brothers, cousin, like what's the order, what's the hierarchy? But there was obviously one. I mean, that's what Boaz alludes to, right? Yeah.
It's not like,
it's not like it's not like
you become president if the president and the vice president and the secretary is, no, not the secretary, the speaker of the house, if they all die at once. How you become the next president?
Well, would it be me? Only if I'm the whatever survivor, right? Designated survivor?
No, not long. Yeah, the designated survivor.
Did you
ever watch that show?
No. We've talked about it on here before, though. But there's some sort of system there in the Old Testament that says, here's the order, because Boaz alludes to, I'm not the first up. I'm the runner up. There's someone else ahead of me in line. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes for a good read, and just to say it like that doesn't trivialize the book of Ruth. It doesn't make it not real. It doesn't make it fictional, but it's recorded in such a way intentionally to keep you drawn in. It's the reason that, like, if you're reading a history book, you're going to enjoy a history book that's actually told with like drama to it. Not even additional drama, just the drama of the natural events, instead of like, you could read all that stuff in a history book with this happened on this date. Boom. This happened on this date.
Yeah. A giant chart of date, name, place, event.
Right. You'd rather read it in story form. So that's how Ruth is written. And so, so it's the dramatic climax. This is the tension.
And we've had all this fun. We've been getting to know Boaz, this sweet guy. He's caring for Ruth. I know. He's like inviting her to dinner, and they're eating and drinking together. He's sending her home to Naomi. So much so that this time around, he's like, how could I not?
Exactly.
I love that line. Ruth gets home and she's, that's what she tells us. Like, how'd it go? Hey, have we got more barley? No, what about the other stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, she iterates that. We just don't hear the whole dialogue.
Right.
Biblical narrative is not quite told the way the breakup is told.
But yeah, so there's this other guy who's going to get first dibs.
Another man
on Ruth. So that's the
cliffhanger of chapter 3.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to have cliffhangers, and so we'll get it resolved next week. But yeah, so there's this whole scene. The whole scene of chapter 3 is like Naomi telling Ruth to go and lay at his feet while he's sleeping and uncover his feet, and he'll tell you what to do. And it's kind of this weird scene, and it's like, well, what is going on here? And there's lots of people who love to speculate on this kind of stuff. And some will even say that like this Hebrew idiom of like uncovering somebody's feet means to like engage in sexual intercourse with them. And I think sometimes it is used that way. And so some people will like read into this and be like, what's that? Like, was Ruth trying to seduce him? And it's like, well, the text does not tell us that specifically, what it does tell us though, is that, and this is what I said in my sermon, is like, it's told us that Boaz is a worthy man, an upright man, a man of like high standing. It even says he doesn't want to disgrace her. Like he doesn't want ill will for her. He even calls her a worthy woman, and people call her worthy. All right. Not to say that they couldn't make some mistakes or, I don't know, do something that they shouldn't do in that moment. I don't know. The text doesn't tell us that. And so it's better for us just to go with what we have. And it says that she lay at his feet and uncovered his feet, and he was startled by that. As I would be too.
Toes get cold in the night.
Yeah.
That little wind comes into the threshing floor. Ooh. Actually, that has happened. Well, no, it has happened. There I was on the threshing floor that one night, July 5th. No. Yeah, but like, I mean, I have had it where my covers actually, for whatever reason, you know, like came up on my legs and then my feet were exposed.
Yeah.
I don't sleep with socks on. I think that's weird.
Oh, I don't sleep with socks.
I know people personally in my life who do that. It was very weird.
My kids were sleeping with socks on for a long time, and their feet were like peeling and stuff.
Oh, no kidding.
You gotta let your feet breathe, kids.
I will say this: I have fallen asleep with socks on. Then I wake up like sweating. I'm just so hot because your feet regulate your body temp. You know.
I know all about that.
So, anyways, Boaz, feet uncovered, boom, startled in the night, and there's Ruth, and kind of interesting. I was a little surprised. I mean, so like, and maybe it was just the startle of it. It was like, who are you? You know, like who's here, right? I mean. It's a bit surprising. There's a human there.
It's also dark.
And it's dark, but that's why I was like thinking like, well, maybe I just haven't been out in the dark lately. I don't know. I guess it's hard to see in the dark.
I was playing night games with my kids in the dark last night.
Yeah, was it hard to see?
Yeah, very hard.
One of your kids sneak up and you're like, who are you?
Well, we were just playing hide and seek in the dark, and I was it. And I almost stepped on Hazel. I was like 2 feet from her. And she could see me coming because I was like in the light and she was in a shadow. And so yeah, it was fun.
So there you go. So he's surprised seemingly in the text that this person's there. And it was kind of interesting too, right? What does she say? Spread your wings.
Yeah, that's an Old Testament idea. I mean, you heard this on like in Psalm 91, like on eagle's wings, you know, or finding refuge under the wings of God. So, yeah, that's like this Hebrew idiom for being like covered and wrapped up. Yeah, being protected. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that was this thing, I think, what Boaz said to her in the previous chapter.
Yeah, that she's seeking that from God.
Yeah. So here she is, laying it on the line before Boaz. I need your protection. I desire it. And like, I think it's probably not obvious to us because like we don't have these weird, no offense, Old Testament Israelite people, but we don't have these like kinsman redeemer laws. I mean, that's like totally foreign to us.
Right.
But when she says what she says to Boaz, like she doesn't say, "Hey, will you be my kinsman redeemer?" That's not what she says. But it seems like what Boaz hears from her, right? Because immediately he goes into that. Yeah. Well, and he praises her for it, which is also kind of interesting. Yeah. That. The fact that, so Ruth doing this, I mean, I guess this is really different than our like romance stories, right? Like our romance, our idea of love, and I think most of the movies that depict it in our culture, it's going to be focusing on, you know, a person who's in love with another person. And that's like the whole thing. I mean, it's the biggest value is like finding love, you know, finding the one, right? Yeah. But in this ancient culture, above and beyond that notion of love would be like love of family. And protection of family. Because Ruth is doing this not necessarily for as much her own benefit as it is for Naomi's, right? It's her land. I mean, a little bit, this gets into chapter 4. We don't have to like go there today. But anyways, Boaz is impressed by Ruth because not only has she left her home to come and take care of Naomi, but now even in this act, what does he say? You didn't go after the young men.
Yeah.
Which is... Like, I guess Elimelech's like, well, you had that picture in the email. I was like, he's an old dude, a bearded man.
Yeah, Boaz.
Boaz.
Yeah, because Boaz has called her my daughter.
That's right.
And that's this distinguishing thing about young men. You know, most scholars that read this would say like that probably means Boaz is much older than Ruth, probably of like Naomi's generation,
right? And Naomi knew him, you know, and this is after they've come back from their time away during the famine. So like Naomi was clearly aware of Boaz, you know, prior to heading out, and that he was a worthy man or whatever. So like he's had a reputation, he's built up. So he's not a young dude, I guess. And he's so impressed by Ruth. Not only she cared for Naomi by leaving her home and just attaching herself to Naomi, but here she is now even making this, offering herself and asking Boaz, like putting her life on the line, but not just for herself, but really for Naomi too. Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah. So I said this line in my sermon and kind of made the connection then, to us, like, Ruth laid it all on the line at the feet of her Redeemer, Boaz. And is that the way we see our relationship with Jesus? Like, wholly, completely, utterly dependent. Like, if it's a poker game, all in on Jesus. For 21st century Americans, it's like, well, I mean, I might hold a couple back for myself. Like, I got a couple other things I'm managing here, God. Like, I don't know. Can I hold on to these other things? Like, a couple other things, So that's a big question for us to ask. It's not like that's dependent on our salvation. Like, I want to be clear about that. But in terms of like finding the fullness of life that Jesus is offering, like that's really what it means. Like when we say that we're redeemed by Jesus, that's what it means. Like he bought you. Like, you belong to him. We don't we don't like a lot of these ideas, like this idea that I think we like the idea of that we belong, that we have purpose and we have like people, but the idea that I'm like somebody's possession, we're like, no, I'm not owned by anybody. I'm a free man, It's like, no, you're a slave to Christ. What? I mean, that's how Paul talks.
Yeah.
Right? Really? Yeah. And so we call Jesus our Lord. What does that mean? It means he's in charge. Actually. And so it's like, do I trust him enough in his goodwill and his promises to be like, you know what? That's actually way better for me than for me to cling to something else, or for me to claim some sort of authority or charge over my life or the way this world should go. Like, it's more freeing to be like, actually, no, Jesus, you can have that. Like, you can have my worries. You can have my anxiety. You want to handle this mess? Is that what you're saying? Okay. You can have it. Like, I mean, yeah, that's what Jesus is offering. So I think that's that line, the one, is your one thing necessary? I was saying this,
Yeah.
and that's the line that Jesus says to Martha in Luke chapter 10, where Martha and Mary are there and Jesus is teaching and Mary's sitting at the feet of Jesus and Martha's running around in the kitchen, and Martha comes and yells at her sister and wants Jesus to chastise Mary for just sitting around. And Jesus says there's one thing necessary.
Yeah. That's a really interesting picture for, and I want to be, sensitive too, like, or not to give the impression, and I know you would be totally, it's always tough in church work or like in preaching or teaching, because like there's always more you can say. Everything's like super nuanced.
Because it's contextual with what people are going through and dealing with.
Yeah. Or I mean, like, so it's not like the idea of the Christian life is one where we just sit and don't do anything, right?
No.
Yeah, right. However,
we do what Jesus says to do, though.
Exactly. And it could be somewhat of a trap or an illusion to imagine that being really busy, getting myself very busy with church-related things is what God is asking of me. Yeah, I mean, I think the question you're kind of asking, right, or inviting us to ask ourselves with laying ourselves for Christ as our Redeemer is, what kind of stake do we allow him to have in our lives? Like, how much do we allow him to speak and direct our actions, our thoughts? What's our organizing principle of our lives? What are we organizing it around? And what's that influenced by?
Yeah. And I mean, I alluded to just some conversations with people lately.
That's right. Yeah.
There have been multiple of them last week with multiple people. It's almost like just the same story on repeat, different details. Which basically just like the life is just sucking, you know? Like it's just, if it can go wrong, it goes wrong, you know? If it rains, it pours. That whole thing, you know? And there are a number of people that I know that's the station in life that they're in right now. It's not to say that some things aren't going well or good, and not even to say like they're moping around about it. It's just to the point of like, this is stripped away, and this thing is stripped away, and this thing is broken, and this thing is broken. And all along, you get to a point where it's like, I have nothing left. Like I've got nothing to offer. Like, and all the things that I would have found purpose in or hope in, or like none of that matters, you know. And if all that breaks, that can be a very paralyzing thing. If Jesus isn't in the picture, you know, Jesus isn't in the picture, and life breaks like that, then you're like, well, yeah, life's over. But if it breaks and you find in the center Jesus offering you healing and redemption and life out of this mess, then it's like, well, you've been here all along. Like you know, well, you must be my one thing necessary then. You know, you're the one who's here with me in this mess. You're the one who's here with me in this brokenness. And you're the one that was here with me when everything was going well, and I might not have even noticed you because I thought things were, you know, pretty well handled, and I would, you know, touch base with you every once in a while.
Right.
But it's like, yeah, if he's your one thing needful when everything's broken, then how can he not be your one thing needful all the time? You know, and that's the point. It's like, yeah, I think it's just that kind of central question of like our faith, like on a daily basis, is Jesus central to our life?
Yeah. It's been very instructive for me too to understand. I didn't get this for a long time, but like when the scriptures talk about purity of heart, this is what they're talking about. The idea of, so like Psalm 24, you know, who will enter the sanctuary of God, like you has clean hands and a pure heart. And then it follows it by who does not lift up his soul to what is false. So, and you get the opposite end in I think James talks about it. Jesus will talk about it when he compares money and God, right? You can't have both as your God. Like you will either love one and hate the other. So like the way our hearts are work, I suppose, is that they need a God. They are going to worship. It's going to be something. And purity of heart is not talking about, you know, I adhere to all, you know, like if someone looked at my life, they would see me living according to the morals and ethics and codes of what God has set out, because I'm a very pure person. In that sense, although like purity, I think a lot of times gets understood that way. When the scriptures talk about purity of heart, they're talking about that one essential thing. Yeah. Because that's what matters. Like even when Jesus becomes your one, or you know, if he becomes your one essential thing, you're still going to stumble and fall. You know,
but he's not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He will lift you up.
Yeah.
He will restore you.
Yeah.
Your identity is not based in that brokenness. And so I just find it really helpful to help make that distinction. Like when we're talking about Jesus as the one essential thing, or if you read about purity of heart in the scriptures and you think, well, I haven't lived up to, I'm not a pure person.
Yeah.
No. As someone's talking about, it's talking about if you are looking to Jesus to be your redemption and your forgiveness, that is purity of heart.
Yeah. Because it's, you know, all of our righteousness comes from Christ.
That's right.
So, yeah. I guess I just like, you know, as pastors, we get to a privilege to walk with people through life. So the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and everybody, I think gets those opportunities to some degree with the people in our lives.
Yeah. Friends, family, neighbors.
Yeah, exactly. We just probably do it with lots of people and lots of different stations of life on a daily basis, and I guess I just personally have, I've seen I've seen how this world can just break people and break stuff, and it's just, what I've seen more than that is how when Jesus is central and Jesus is present in the lives of these people, it's just like the strength of faith is so much deeper and just more real and tangible in those moments, where it's just like, I don't know. I'm sure you've had these moments too, where, in life where it's just like, it's in the hardest of moments, in the helplessness of moments where the presence of Jesus feels, not to use that word feeling lightly, but like it just feels more real.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think of Peter on the waves, right?
Yeah.
Like there's an example of a time where, here he is, he's walking out on, this tumultuous, turbulent, unsteady, wavering floor of water beneath him. And the thing that he needs, the one thing needful for him, look at Jesus.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes on him. As soon as he takes it off, starts looking at the ways that it'll wreck you. Yeah. It'll pulverize you. I mean, like, what's the difference between a person who goes through incredible hardship and either comes out the other side a stronger person or comes out the other side utterly destroyed and bitter and resentful? I'll tell you what I think the secret antidote is. It's faith. It's the power of God working through brokenness, which God does to purify us in some sense, because Jesus, like you make that discovery that he is the one thing needful, or it's possible that those times will reveal that he was never the one thing needful.
And none of that. You're putting all your eggs in the wrong baskets.
And when I think back to, we talked at the beginning of this podcast that, it began during the pandemic. Interestingly, that was a time when you saw kind of both sides. There were people, a number of people. I still have conversations with people who will say, yeah, my faith really came alive during the pandemic. I was always a Christian, but we got into the pandemic and all of a sudden it's just, I was more on fire, or faith was more real to me, or I had growth in my faith. Why? Well, in part probably because life was harder.
Yeah.
The pandemic exposed how much of life is like the waves, it's changing and not constant and not reliable. And that was a tumultuous time. For some, it deepened their faith. For others, it became the barrier for them that removed them from a connection to a local church, or maybe a connection to their faith, right? Lots of churches all over the place suffered a lot of losses in terms of people who were in attendance regularly, and I would want to include it too here. Just if you're listening to this and you had been a person who attended Saints Peter and Paul, and since the pandemic that hasn't been the case for you, like I want to make sure you hear those words and know we're not talking about judgment here. No. Our arms are like we would love to have you here, or we'd love to even have a conversation, connect with you, because what we want you to see, and if you're listening to this, like clearly there's, you're still connecting yourself in some way. We just wholeheartedly believe that Jesus is the one thing needful.
Yeah.
And we want you to be attached to that one thing needful, because everything else in life is just, it'll slip.
Right.
It'll go. It's not going to last.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and Kevin and I aren't perfect by any means. Kevin shot himself in the eye with a gun, but
I wasn't going to mention it, but now that you mention it, it's probably hard to see. Here, tell me when I get close enough.
We can zoom in.
This is for all you hunters out there. Is that good, Aaron?
Oh, you got to go look up.
Look up?
There you go. There. Oh, gross. Get out. Back up.
Sorry, everyone. Sorry. Yeah. Turns out I don't know how to use a gun very well.
Yeah, a little urgent care visit there.
Yeah,
but you didn't shoot yourself, but
I like to talk about it that way. That sounds more dramatic.
Like Christmas story. You'll shoot your eye out.
I thought of that, literally.
I was gonna say something.
Well, you're saying like our stories.
Well, I was gonna say, if there's anything that we're attempting to do in our preaching, in our teaching, in our counseling, in our discipleship, in our leadership, it's to present the truth of Jesus to you, and to bring Jesus to you, and to bring you to Jesus. And so that's just always our goal. It's just consistently bringing Jesus, you know? And so that, I mean, I think especially during the pandemic, like that was our thing where it's like, I mean, this is like a moment where it's like, I mean, I don't know what the right answer to any of this stuff is, but I know Jesus. So you know what? We're going to give you Jesus, and we're just going to strive for Jesus and unity in Jesus. It's like, let's just do that.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. You know, I mean, when we say we're alive in Christ, we have our life in Christ. Like, we're all wrapped up in Jesus. And that's where we found through experience, like, we you know, in our sinful nature, we try to just cling to a little bit of all these things, but it's just like, you know what? At the end of the day, I need nothing else than Jesus. You know? And I pray that all of us can be all like that, all in on Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I think of the plot line of my life, and the rising action and the conflicts and the climax and all that. I mean, truly, like, it's in those moments when you fall real hard and you discover, like, the goodness of God, because he's full of grace, you know, and he restores you and he loves you like it never happened, because it didn't in his eyes, because Christ took it for you. They help you see, like, going back to the unnecessary conflict idea, like, wow, maybe I don't need to create this conflict in my life, you know? Like, why? It takes some thought, you know, like, why does this happen? What's my contribution towards it? What is it telling me about my heart? You know, like, what am I trusting in that's leading me to act, you know, or live in this way? And then kind of circle back to, man, if it's not taking me to Jesus, well, let me think about that. You know, like,
exactly.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So
all right.
Even in this conversation piece, like, as you go and talk to others, Jesus is also there with you in that.
So totally.
Don't worry about doing it perfectly. You just listen to us do it imperfectly.
You might even shoot your eye out.
That's exactly it. But he'll go with you too. So
absolutely. Well, good chat, bud.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week. Peace.